What about the filmmaker, George Lucas? Well, our man in Hollywood, Jim Brown, reports they're in luck.
Here they come.
He's responsible for 3 of the 4 top-grossing films of all time: Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and should Return of the Jedi's current success hold on, George Lucas' latest movie will knock E.T. off its #1 perch. Not a bad record for a filmmaker yet to turn 40. George Lucas' movies may belong to the public, but the man is fiercely private, almost gun-shy when it comes to the press. But he opened up to Los Angeles Times reporter Dale Pollock for a fascinating book called Skywalking: The Life and Films of George Lucas. Pollack got Lucas' cooperation with flattery and threats.
I knew how important film school had been to him, and I felt that Star Wars had inspired countless youngsters to want to be film directors themselves, and that he had a responsibility to that audience to provide them with an effective role model. And secondly, I told him that if I didn't do the book, somebody else would, and that the book might not be as thorough and as accurate as I believe it is.
In other words, the unauthorized version, so to speak.
So to speak.
Well, when you got into, now you work in the film business as a reporter, when you got inside Lucasland, were there surprises?
I think I was surprised in Lucasland at the dedication of the people, both to their work and to Lucas himself. He is not what you would call a charismatic personality. He doesn't inspire the kind of loyalty that you might think somebody like Francis Coppola does among his associates. There is not the strokes and the encouragement and the pats on the back that you see among other Hollywood workers. And yet there is a fanatical loyalty among his employees, both to Lucas as a person and to the goals he has set out for himself to achieve.
That loyalty is also due to Lucas' generosity. Those who work for Lucas say it's the best job in the film industry.
He is extremely generous. On Empire, he took everyone who had worked for him from the inception of Lucasfilm, which was in the early 1970s, and gave them all a prorated share of Empire's profits. This was everybody from the janitors to the president of the company. I think this was unprecedented, not only in the movie business, but in American industry.
George Lucas began making movies at the University of Southern California. A student film called THX 1138 became a feature for Warner Brothers. But his breakthrough film was American Graffiti, which cost less than $1 million and grossed more than $40 million. Graffiti and later Star Wars enabled Lucas to turn his back on Hollywood.
He felt that the only way he could really set up what he considers to be an alternative to Hollywood was to have a miniature version of many of the reasons he needed Hollywood. In other words, if he needed he used to have to come down to Los Angeles to dub the sound in his films. He hated coming down to Los Angeles. He built a dubbing studio in San Rafael. That was essential to him to guarantee the independence he felt he needed.
Independence has its price. Lucas financed Empire Strikes Back, and when the film went over budget, he was broke.
At the time, Lucas suffered immensely from both the humiliation of being broke. This is a man who had made Star Wars, the biggest movie of all time, and he almost couldn't make a payroll one week. And the fact that he had to go back to banks, for whom he has no great love, and virtually beg for the money to complete that movie was a very humiliating experience for him.
And as you say, most people were not aware that all of this was happening at the time of Empire.
Even his closest friends, Francis Coppola, who was having economic problems of his own at that time, asked George for money, and George told him, "I don't have any money. I'm almost broke myself." Francis couldn't believe what he was hearing, and I think ultimately didn't believe it, although it was true.
Dale Pollock says Lucas now wants to bow out of the limelight and go back to experimental filmmaking and spend more time with his wife, Oscar-winning editor Marcia Lucas, and their baby daughter, Amanda. We may have seen the last of the Star Wars saga.
He has told me that he will not do Star Wars films until he can bring that cost significantly down. In fact, he even joked with me he fantasizes selling the remaining 6 films. And I said, "How could you bear to see what somebody would do to them?" He said, "It would make my work look better."
For today, Jim Brown, NBC News, Hollywood.